Ah, yes, our favorite neighborhood spider witch, Beverly Cannoli Oil, has allowed prosecutors, according to Christina Rex from WBZ, has allowed prosecutors' motion to access interview notes from Karen Read's interview with none other than Gretchen Voss from Boston Magazine, as well as for the Boston 25 interview that her parents had sat down with our favorite here on this channel, Ted Daniel. So let's get into it. Hello, 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 and welcome to Alexasrewm, where we are not lawyers, we are not medical professionals, and we are not law enforcement. We are just people. People who have opinions about all things going on in the true crime community, including this breaking update in the Karen Read case, which we have been following extensively since halfway through the first trial. Now, a hearing was held earlier. Gosh, it feels like a millennia now, but this hearing was last week. And there is another hearing actually coming up, but Andrew Myers had me on his show last Sunday. You can go check that video out where we actually broke down parts of the latest hearing, which talked about these exact motions. And, it's interesting because I've seen a lot of people comment about it from both sides, right? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Personally, I say who cares? I mean, Karen Read had Julie Miller living in her home where she no longer felt safe because that's where she was arrested for 48 hours, 72 hours. And if anybody couldn't gotten a scoop, it could have been Julie Miller. No matter how many different ways you want to spin it, if there was a story there where she found even an inkling of a feeling that Karen Read could be guilty of running her boyfriend over, Officer John O'Keefe, going 24 miles in reverse with her Lexus SUV, and continuing on so for 62 feet. Yes, 62 feet. Don't you think she would have included that in her article? I mean, what breaking news would that be? That'd be huge. That'd be Donald Trump huge. So I'm not really worried about any of this. And I don't think a lot of people who believe Karen Read is innocent is either. So let's just jump into this Boston 25 article. I believe this was the first outside of the Twitter X universe, for sources to report on this. So, new rulings in Karen Read unaliving case centered around media recordings, right? So the redacted / any of the stuff that wasn't published publicly, right? Anything that wasn't included in the interview itself. So I'm curious to hear how they're going to use it, and very, very fascinated. So, a new ruling in the Karen Read unaliving case focuses on the recordings from 2 local media outlets. Boston 25 News has been ordered to turn over unaired footage of an interview 25 investigates conducted with Karen Read's parents by Judge Beverly Cannoli Oil. And we're going to play that interview clip in a second. We kind of played a little bit of it in one of my last videos, post hearing. So, and I have a lot of feelings about this because, again, like I said, I'm not worried about the contents of anything Karen Read said on or off the record. And again, I will stress to you, Julie Miller wrote an all-out expose, a 2-part expose on this woman after living in her home where she was arrested for 48 to 72 hours, whatever it was. A whole arse weekend. If there was anything to dig up, you think she would have dug it up. Unless she's just a crap reporter. And from what I read, she did really well. In fact, a lot was revealed in each part, especially part 2, concerning Mr. Meatball Morrissey and his search for that special prosecutor, Hank the Tank, and how he asked a number of other DAs in his office to prosecute this case again, and they all declined. So again, if anybody was going to get the scoops, it would have been Julie Miller. It would have been Julie Miller. It could have been anybody. It could have been Gretchen Boss. It could have been any of these people. So I'm not worried. But that being said, I believe that journalists... Sorry, I'm going back to full screen for a second so I can rant. Journalists deserve the right to protect their sources. I mean, how, asinine is this, guys? That in 2024, especially in Massachusetts, where it's like, land of the frickin' free. They invented that for the rest of the frickin' country. They started all of this. And a journalist doesn't have a right to protect their sources? And they did have an interesting argument, and I'm not going to get into it in this particular video because I want you to check out my breakdown with Andrew Myers. I will link that video in my description box below where we break it down a little bit deeper. But essentially, where it is, I think it is pertaining to NBC or it's either NBC or something connected with the Fox News one, where the headquarters is located. It's located, I believe, in New York City, right? Where in New York, the laws are a little bit different. And I hope in that regard that the media, the Boston 25, NBC 10 Boston, Boston Magazine, I hope that they do put up a fight and that the laws do start changing, because not only are they protecting their sources, but it's the privacy of the sources. And again, Beverly is all about protecting witnesses, right? All about protecting privacy, the privacy of people. And would that not include, in my opinion, sources in an article? I mean, you don't know what kind of dangers you could be presenting, right? There was all of this argument about, the jurors, post-Karen Reed trial, right? And now she impounded their names from the public, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. And jurors started speaking out and interviewing anyways, because they're like, nobody's listening to us. Nobody's listening to anything that we have to say. And she was very adamant about protecting the privacy of the jurors. So why is it not the same in regards to the privacy of people participating who want to remain anonymous in these articles? That is where I have a problem. That is where I have a problem. And the fact, I mean, again, I can go on and on and on and on and on about this. Wait, say that one more time.
Look at how cute these stickers are. I had to ruin the video to show you guys stickers. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Don't cut that out either.
I'm not going to. We got our order of cat food because we're fancy, right? We order like the bougiest food for our cat because our cat is our child, obviously. And I guess with this order came stickers because we've been loyal customers for like, I don't know, probably a year and a half. Smalls. It's a really good brand. This is not an affiliate plug in any way, shape, or form. I am not nearly big enough for that, but it is really good if you have especially like an older cat. Our cat's like 17 years old, so she needs all the nutrients she can get for her little baby joints. But anyways, I digress. So there you have it, Julia with some stickers. Let's get back into this Karen Reed rant. Whatever the duck I was saying. But yeah, that's where I have a problem. And not only that, I mean, it's not even just about protecting the privacy of sources, but it's also the privacy of the material and the notes. And it's just overall, I mean, it's the same argument that Tim Bradle made the other day about getting Aidan Carney's devices back. This is his livelihood. This is how he produces a living for himself. This is his income. And when you take all of that away, again, it's like, why should I have to give you access to all of my devices? It's not like I'm, an online terrorist, right? And I'm planning to cyber attack the United States, right? It's just like, and start World War III. It's not like that. So I just, overall, I'm very conflicted, because part of me is like, well, who cares? Like, let it come in, because I don't think that there's anything to really hide. And if anything, it's going to help Karen Read in the long run. That's my opinion. Anything that she said, she's a very articulate woman, very intelligent. And if her attorneys didn't believe in her and didn't feel comfortable with her speaking to media, or her family speaking to media, they would definitely express that opinion, and she would probably go with the flow and agree to not give interviews and encourage the same for her family. So I don't see that as being the issue. It's more of just, like, where is journalistic freedom, right? So anyways, I digress. Let's go back to this. 25 Investigates aired this 5-minute and 40-second report from the interview investigative reporter Ted Daniel conducted with Bill and Janet Read and Read's brother, Nathan, on August 1st, 2023. And August is a very significant month for the Commonwealth, because that is the same month, just a few weeks later, where Meatball hops on his own camera, his own little soapbox, and tells everybody to stop harassing the witnesses in this case, Colin Albert. And the Alberts have a lot of interesting news that has unraveled over the last couple of days, and I'll be probably sharing some updates in regards to that very, very soon. Prosecutors in Karen Read's case argued for the records from Boston 25 News to be turned over by arguing that unaired statements made by the Reads are relevant and material to put the relevant aired statement, some of which will be introduced at trial in context. So let's check it out. I don't think this is I don't know if this is the same clip or if this is a different clip, but let us check it out.
In a basement, dragged out through a bulkhead, and left in a snowstorm to die in the cold.
That's how Karen Read's family claims John O'Keefe was killed in the town of Canton. They shared that theory with 25 Investigates reporter Ted Daniel.
Ted spoke to Read's parents for nearly 2 hours about their fight to prove their daughter's innocence.
It seems logical that police would have looked at Karen Read as a possible suspect. One of her taillights had fresh damage. She openly questioned if she hit John O'Keefe, and prosecutors say she left him a voicemail that night saying she hated him. Those are some of the facts being used against her, but Read's parents and thousands supporting her say there's so much more to this story that doesn't add up. She's from Taunton with a career in finance. He was a Boston cop from Braintree.
Really don't want to be in the picture.
Get over here. Karen Read's parents say she and John O'Keefe became serious in 2019, right before the pandemic.
They just seem to be in a happy place, yeah.
And spending a lot of time together?
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Vacations together.
Yep.
Going out together.
If the relationship had become toxic by January 2022, as prosecutors allege, it's not apparent from this snapshot in time. At C.F. McCarthy's in Canton, they laugh and embrace during a night of heavy drinking. According to police, Karen would back over John and leave him for dead in a snowstorm 2 hours later. Prosecutors say it happened outside the Canton home of another Boston cop named Brian Albert. Karen says she dropped John off there for a get-together.
During your first discussions with Karen, did she believe she may have hit John?
No. She felt she struck something. She said, "Dad, I think I struck something." I said, "What do you mean?" Right? This was in the hospital. Right? He says, "I remember, backing up and hitting something."
Police find damage to the passenger.
So this is the thing that everybody on the Twitter axis is like, see, she admitted it. She admitted it. She said, I hit something. But we're going to find that it was taken very much out of context.
Side taillight of Karen's Lexus LX 570. How the damage occurred is in dispute. The Reeds believe it happened when Karen backed out of John O'Keefe's driveway hours after police say she hit him. Here's the video.
She backs up to go out and search for John O'Keefe. And that's how that vehicle was damaged.
In court documents, prosecutors say the
And that's how that vehicle was damaged. That is how the vehicle was damaged. But nobody likes to play the few seconds after her father, Bill Reed, says, Dad, I think I struck something. And that is allegedly her admitting millions or hundreds of times, however many times they want to say she admitted it. She didn't. She didn't. And I know I don't have to convince you guys because you keep coming back week after week, but I mean, it just frustrates the frick out of me, man. It does. I mean, there's no arguments. You look at this video. You look at this ducking video.
It was damaged.
In court documents, prosecutors say the video only shows Karen coming close to John's car, and no fragments or pieces of a broken taillight were discovered in John's driveway.
Look at
And
it
you
frame by
see, exactly. You look at it frame by frame, you see his car move. And of course, if you watch the trial, Lally tried to spin it like, well, it's because of the snow. All the snow toppling over it is going to make move in the way that it did. Just happened to at the same exact time that she is clearly, unless you are blind, and I'm pretty blind. I consider myself a relatively blind person. I mean, half the time I'm like leaning into my screen because I cannot see. I definitely need to get my eyes checked again. But you can see clear as day. I mean, the angle that she's coming out in reverse. I mean, how many times have we all done that? And of course, it's not going to cause like severe damage to your vehicle, but if you hit it hard enough, I don't know how many miles an hour at this point she was going in reverse. That would be a question I would have. How fast was she going at this point? Is there a way to potentially tell how quickly she was going in reverse? To have hit John O'Keefe's car hard enough to have cracked her taillight. I mean, and that's what we'll hear too from later testimony from Nicholas Barros, the the Dighton cop who arrived at Karen Reed's parents' house.
frame. And you tell me whether or not the O'Keefe vehicle, the left rear wheel, does not jetson forward upon impact and return to its previous position.
Police did discover pieces of taillight where O'Keefe was allegedly hit, but the Reeds say it wasn't until after Karen's SUV was in the custody of law enforcement. State police reported towing the Lexus to the Canton police station at 5:30 p.m. Nathan Reed says daylight video from his dad's house shows the car was taken more than an hour before that.
They confiscate Karen's car at my parents' residence in North Dighton at 4:16 p.m. And somewhere in the neighborhood of 5:30, 5:45, Mass State Police CERT team comes back to the scene. They search the scene then with 2 feet of snow, and pieces of a tail lamp are found on top of the snow.
The Reeds also questioned John's.
And that's the other thing with more snow. Like, oh yes, it makes total sense to send the CERT team out there to search again when it's dark out again, because this is the winter time. And there's more snow on the ground. Yes, that makes so much sense. And of course you would finally find the taillight pieces that you missed earlier in the day. Make it make sense, because it doesn't. It don't make sense. It don't.
Injuries as seen in autopsy photos. They say John appears to have dog bites on his arm. The defense theory is that O'Keefe was beaten inside the Albert home and attacked by the Albert's German Shepherd. Brian Albert's attorney declined to comment.
Our investigators also have found multiple people who have been attacked by the dog. I think John O'Keefe entered that house was sucker punched, a fight ensued, and he was overwhelmed.
Prosecutors call that theory a fanciful conspiracy. According to the Norfolk DA's office, 8 people inside the home and 3 more outside had testified that O'Keefe never entered. The office says GPS data from O'Keefe's phone backs that up. And the medical examiner who performed an autopsy on O'Keefe found no signs of Mr. O'Keefe being involved in any type of physical altercation or fight.
If the events happen the way Karen
Which is like not necessarily true because, again, going back to Scoribello's testimony, she said the injuries he sustained could have been caused by exactly what the defense is claiming to have happened. She literally testified it is possible. Yes, it could have been caused by this. It could have been caused by that. So that's not necessarily true. And again, circling back to the dog bites, I mean, I just did a whole video on this the other day because the Commonwealth is trying to exclude the dog bite expert that we enjoyed so much testifying in the first trial, Dr. Marie Russell, from testifying in the Reed trial. And those, I'm assuming what Bill Reed is alluding to here, which would be even more helpful, because it's like, hey, it's just further confirming what Julie Miller just reported in the Vanity Fair article, I believe it was in part 1, about Chloe Albert and the alleged dog attacks that occurred, I believe, like, in the previous months before this happened. So, and obviously before Chloe Albert was rehomed.
Karen's attorneys say they did. How many people would have to be involved in the cover-up?
My sense is that there are a handful of people, influential people, who know what happened. And ultimately, all right, will resolve these issues. My daughter will be free. That's what I believe.
Are you confident of that as well?
Yes. Yep.
Is Karen
Yes.
that confident?
Yes. Yeah. We are.
The Norfolk County DA's office is now publicly pushing back. A spokesperson tells me there was no conspiracy or cover-up. Such claims have been systematically refuted by evidence, including the medical examiner's report, the GPS data of the victim's phone, and the detailed crash reconstruction analysis, and the
I mean, that's a joke and a half. Yeah, Trooper Paul, super reliable. That's why he's not going to be testifying in this upcoming retrial. Yes, of course.
electronic event data recorder from Karen Reed's car. Both sides appear to be digging in as this case moves in the direction of a heated trial. For 25 Investigates, I'm Ted Daniel.
So that is the video interview that they are referring to in regards at least to Boston 25. So then jumping back to our handy dandy article. In the filing, the Norfolk DA's office states William Reed claimed that an unnamed, unidentified, and uncertain culprit somehow caused John O'Keefe's injuries. William Reed sponsored the baseless claim that John O'Keefe entered the house, 34 Fairview Road, Canton, Massachusetts, was sucker punched. A fight ensued, and O'Keefe was overwhelmed. And again, Paul O'Keefe also had allegedly stated, this is what's been reported, that it looks like John O'Keefe did 5 rounds with Mike Tyson. So it wasn't just Bill Reed who said that, who I believe was with Karen in the house when she went upstairs to collect her things and pretty much say goodbye to the kid. The filing specifically seeks Bill Reed's statements. So even though they're not going to get access to his phone records within like that 30-day period, they're going to get access to every statement he made throughout this 2-hour interview. And obviously only 5 minutes of that interview was put together. They got to edit it down, yada, yada. To Daniel, after he was asked if Karen believed she may have hit John. In the segment that aired on Boston 25, Bill Reed said, no. She felt she struck something. She said, Dad, I think I struck something. In a separate ruling, Boston Magazine was also ordered to turn over audio recordings from an interview Karen Reed gave to one of its reporters, Gretchen Voss, who I think in the hearing, Hank the Tank called Gretchen Emily Voss. And if I were Gretchen Voss, I'd be like, you can't even get my name right, bro? Come on now. So, I mean, there's that. In her decision, Judge Beverly Cannoli Oil wrote that there is no privilege for news reporters under Massachusetts law, but there should be. There should be, period, end of story. Massachusetts is only one of the few states in the country that does not have special protections for journalists. And again, that leads me down a little bit of a rabbit hole about exactly what kind of protections there are in other states. For instance, in Tennessee, where I currently preside, Tennessee has a shield law that protects journalists, sources, and all other information gathered for publication or broadcast, whether obtained confidentially or not, and whether published or not. And in New York, they also have a shield law. They have absolute privilege. Professional journalists are protected from being forced to disclose confidential materials, including the identity of a source. Which, I mean, like, it makes no sense that Massachusetts would be, like, the last guy to do this, right? Like, you literally invented, you started all of this, guys. You started all of this. Freedom and whatnot. Qualified privilege. Non-confidential information is protected. Exactly. So, and this is a big argument. What's been redacted, what was said in confidence, what wasn't said in confidence. But courts may force disclosure if the information is highly relevant and critical to a party's claim or defense. So there is this little caveat here in New York for New York shield law. Applies to civil and criminal cases. The privileges apply equally in both types of cases. So, and I'm just curious to see, like, where isn't it? So, in Wyoming, according to the Googs, Wyoming is a lone exception, having no shield law, no decision from its state Supreme Court protecting a reporter's right to keep sources confidential, but not foreclosing that possibility either. So, like, what actually does it say for Massachusetts, though? I'm so curious. Massachusetts doesn't have a shield law, as we know, but there are some protections for journalists in Massachusetts. Access to public spaces, use of electronic devices in courtrooms, common law balancing test, prohibition of recording, interception, or disclosure. Massachusetts prohibits the recording, interception, use, or disclosure of conversations without the permission of all parties. That's very interesting. Article 16 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights states that the liberty of the press is essential to the security of freedom in the states, which is so wild to me, because it's like you would think that kind of fits under that, but again, it's not explicitly clear. And that's the big problem in all of this. And before I jump, there was something interesting that I haven't yet talked about, but it has circulated on the interwebs. Josh Levy, the U.S. Attorney of Massachusetts.
Today, the ringleader of a highly disturbing harassment campaign targeting journalists just doing their jobs has been sentenced in federal court to several years in prison. This case underscores our unwavering commitment to protecting journalists and to the core principles of freedom of the press that are enshrined in our Bill of Rights. Eric Labarge, Tucker Cockerline, Michael Wasselcheck, and Kenyon Santanian were all conspired to harass and intimidate journalists from New Hampshire Public Radio. These acts were taken in retaliation for their reporting that exposed allegations of misconduct in New Hampshire sober homes operated by a close friend of Mr. Labarge.
It's like, how similar does this sound to exactly was happening in the Turtle Boy case. Right? I mean, again, you're looking at two different instances of corruption being exposed at the very top. And for some reason, just because physical threats may not have made, I mean, that's not actually true because Chris Albert did. He did. It's on candid camera. Did make a physical threat to Turtle Boy. Jill Daniels did technically assault Turtle Boy. Jim Ferris, an employee of Chris Albert, did technically assault Turtle Boy. But nevertheless, even if there wasn't a violent attack, stalking, it wasn't a Robert Tellis situation, doesn't mean that you weaponizing the law and being a little snaky snake, Mr. Meatball, doesn't mean that that's not harassment or intimidation, at least not in my book. And I don't know if this was an off-canter. I don't know. I mean, their office is handling so many different cases, but I found this very interesting because this was, it says November 25th, but I believe this was shared maybe even prior to that. And I just find it very fascinating, and I'm fairly certain that Mr. Meatball was tuning in.
And the harassment campaign even extended to the parents of the journalists. These 4 convicted felons subjected the journalists and their families to weeks of calculated and cruel harassment. They brazenly vandalized their homes, including spray painting the most vile of epitaphs on the walls outside their house. They threw bricks and rocks through the windows and doors, and they instilled fear of further harm by sending messages that these first initial acts were just the beginning. Their malicious conduct inflicted deep emotional harm, not only on the victims, but also on journalists everywhere who are too often subjected to threats and harassment just for doing their jobs. This kind of conduct is not just reprehensible, it's criminal. No journalist should ever face threats, violence, or intimidation for uncovering the truth.
You hear that, Meatball? That means you too. And just because you're not vandalizing Turtle Boy's home, sending your boys from the mob squad, Tully and friends, to cuff him at his kid's bus stop, and then systematically weaponize your authority and tax-paying dollars to intimidate, because that's what you're doing, a journalist from telling the truth, exposing the truth, and what weasel you are, doesn't mean it's not intimidation. It is intimidation. You don't need a spray can to do that.
Our office remains steadfast in ensuring that journalists can do their vital work without fear of retribution. We hope today's sentencing provides a measure of justice and closure to the victims. Today's sentence also sends a message to anyone who tries to intimidate journalists that you will be held accountable in a court of law. Thank you. Hello, I'm John.
I will link that video if you guys want to watch it on your own without my commentary and stopping and going. But yeah, Josh Levy, he is taking names, kicking butts, taking names. Now, we all know he's got eyeballs all up on this. He's watching everything. But like I said, they have hundreds of cases, probably just like this one too, right? The Karen Reed case, Turtle Boy case, all of these different cases going on. And we have so much corruption piling up. I mean, you're a busy bee. You're a busy me. So it might take some time, but ultimately, I believe that this is his, I don't know, but it felt like a message to people like Morrissey and say, hey, I'm watching you. I mean, all those letters from the U.S. Attorney's Office, right, to Meatball. Why would Meatball be freaking out that much? Why would Meatball be emailing judges about Turtle Boy and the harassment prevention order that was denied that Chris Albert had requested from his personal iCloud account about how it needs to stop? And Turtle Boy is a danger to society. So I'm just paraphrasing here. So I think that is his way, just kind of telling everybody, not just Meatball, but everybody, that, hey, I'm not sleeping at the wheel. I'm paying attention. And it's time for you to wake the duck up, because justice is coming. It's coming. So with that being said, if you enjoyed today's content, if you enjoyed my little rant and all the stickers, the sticker talk, make sure you hit that like button. Wait, what? Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you do not miss the next Karen Reed update from me. And make sure you hit that notification. Yes, that like button. Make sure you hit that like button. Sorry, my brain is fried. Because that tells the YouTube algorithm that this is newsworthy news. And it is. It is newsworthy news. It needs to be talked about. And Meatball needs to stop. He needs to stop. He needs to stop. And we need to do better. Massachusetts. And probably a bunch of other states too. I mean, like some of the stuff, like the qualified privileged law within New York too. I mean, it's just journalists have rights. And just because, I hate to say it, mainstream media, that's the old boss. The new boss is creators on YouTube, blog writers, podcasters. That is how most people get their news today. And if you want the truth, you gotta go a little bit alternative. You know, you may not like some things I say. That's fine. I don't consider myself a journalist. I just give my opinions about things that I read. And then I want to have a platform to talk about them. But that is where the news is shifting. That is where the media is shifting. This is becoming mainstream media. Which means we need to take a deeper look at our laws to protect the rights of journalists. What is considered a journalist? And who gets to decide who is and who isn't a journalist? Because at the end of the day, it's all about free speech, baby. And if you're down with that, I'm down with you. That being said, I'll see you in the next one.